Welcome to the Mound City Council meeting for Tuesday, June 10th. We're in council chambers, and please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have our agenda. Are there any amendments?
There's one amendment to the consent agenda, which is in front of everybody. It is a charitable gambling permit for Carboni's Pizza. There's a resolution attached too. Well, it's for the location is Carboni's Pizza. Mound West Tonka Hockey Association is the organization running it.
Okay, and the resolution, all right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second. Or did you want to pull something?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to.
Oh,
That's
well,
on consent.
yeah,
Oh, we doing
we're
consent?
just approving the main agenda
The
right
main
now.
agenda, that's what I thought.
So we have a motion, we have a second to approve the agenda as written, and then the amendment for the consent agenda we'll do next. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull or discuss any of those items before we read through them all?
Yes, I would. I'd like to pull E and G,
E and G?
right, and discuss those a little bit further, if I could, please.
So what we do is then pull those, then consider the consent agenda without those items.
Okay.
And then you can discuss those individually.
All right, I'll try not to step all over this while Dad's gone here. So we will read the, if someone could read the consent agenda items A through I, removing E and G,
Including, but there's also an addition of J. that
and
are
including
bonus.
the amendment J for the gambling permit. If anyone would like to read those items.
I guess I could read them.
Thank you.
I'm so used to you doing it. That's kind of your gig.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda. A, approve payment of claims. B, approve minutes for May 27th, 2025. Approve resolution 2553 approving the liquor licenses. D, approve resolution 2554 approving music concert permit for private party at 2460 Lakewood Lane on Saturday, July 19th. We're going to pull E. F, approve resolution 2556 amending and restating resolution 24106 approving permits for 2025 Spirit of the Lakes Festival for July 17th, 2025 through Saturday, July 19th, 2025, and waiving fees. We're pulling G. H, pay request number 2 in the amount of $302,467.19 to Widmer Construction for the water treatment infrastructure improvements Phase 1. I, pay request 1 in the amount of $455,000 to Concrete Idea, Inc. for County Road 15 sidewalk improvements city project PW 2508, PW 2509. And J, a resolution approving a lawful gambling premises permit for the Mound West Tonka Hockey Association at Carboni's Pizzeria Bar and Grill. Okay.
Okay, so could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through J, omitting E and G for later discussion?
And adding J. Right.
Yeah, and
Adding
J.
J.
Just need a motion to approve that.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Get a second? Okay, all those in favor?
We do a roll call.
Oh, roll call now.
Councilmember Herrick,
Aye.
Councilmember McEnany.
Aye.
Councilmember Pugh,
Aye.
Acting Mayor Castellano.
Aye. All right, That motion carries.
And we'll take E and G as separate items, so we can do E first.
Okay, yeah, let's go down the list. Okay, discussion on item E.
Well, I just had some questions. It seems like we get a lot of requests for variances from the planning commission. And my understanding is that, trying to find the one with this one on there. The form that was sent in to the council for review does not show a reason why this is a hardship on, sorry. 20, oh, I see, I'm sorry, I was doing G. On E, okay, on E, the Pike Road property, let's go back to that, sorry, apologize.
Well, if you, I mean, I guess if you want to do G, already started.
All right,
So why don't we just do
fine.
G?
Yeah, my mistake. Okay, so with that document that was in our packet, it does not show what the hardship is on the resident.
Well, it was in the planning commission notes, which I
Okay.
don't know if I brought. Let me see.
I think he's working on pulling it up.
And I'm not sure if I can recall what the hardship was. I know it was unanimous, passed without any problems.
Right, yeah, it's on 1439 is the page.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, the actual notes?
The minutes?
Well, it's the request of the form that was actually submitted
Right.
for the variance. Do you know, is he planning on, is he present?
Here.
Hi. Can you come up to the podium, please?
Oh, is this for the fence?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
This is item G.
Correct.
yeah.
Timothy Williams, 2881 West Edge Boulevard.
So, you're asking for a variance, and our requirement for a variance is that there's some sort of difficulty or hardship on the property owner. Can you explain to me what the issue is, or what the,
Yes. So when the house was built back in '69, before all the zoning ordinances, the house was built about 16 feet away from the property line on the Pine Road side of, so it's a corner house, Pine Road and West Edge.
right?
So there's plenty of front yard frontage from West Edge, but from Pine Road, it's less. And
Okay.
so the existing backyard fence is chain link. I'd like to replace it with a privacy fence. So it's a 5-foot chain link fence right now. But without a variance, the side of the fence closest to Pine Road would have to be 4 feet, which doesn't give any privacy. So that was the reason for the request for the variance.
Okay.
And if I can, I'm going to try to explain, I wish Sarah was here, but because it's a corner lot, the front yard and backyard are different than a normal homeowner that isn't on a corner lot.
Right.
If it were on a normal property, not being on the corner, the fence height would not even be in question. So that's something that the planning commission has been discussing for a long time, trying to get some understanding of corner lots and trying to get some consistency going with homeowners that aren't on a corner versus, and it doesn't fall into the sight line at all, his
Right.
fence.
For the traffic thing, okay.
And I know we all agreed that it would be a great improvement to the property. He's doing, I think you said natural pine or,
Yes,
Cedar.
cedar, I think, is what Lowe's has
Okay,
quoted
that's
me.
cool. So you're planning on putting the 6-foot fence all the way around the
Yeah.
perimeter of the backyard?
Yeah, along the back edge and the side closest to Pine Road.
Okay, and so replacing basically the chain link fence?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. All right. I just wish that the planning commission would be more thorough in adding this to
Okay.
the packet.
I'll take that to them.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks.
And thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's G.
So that was G.
And so we should be, as we treat them individually, then the council needs to consider the motion on it.
Each item separately?
Yes.
Okay.
So just make a motion to approve G?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I got to set a order.
It's all right.
That's okay.
So I would be looking for a motion to approve consent agenda item G.
I make the motion to approve consent item G on the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay.
And that was it, because it's not actually consent agenda anymore, it's an individual item.
Oh, okay.
No roll call.
No roll call. Even better,
Yeah.
because I kept messing that up last time. All right. We have a motion and a second to approve item G. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. We can move on to consent agenda item E for discussion. That was the 5240
Yep.
Pike Road.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, I had a question about that one. I guess I'm a little concerned in, I guess, our process with the planning commission. I mean, we're gonna give this guy a permit and approval, and we haven't gotten approval from, LMCD or not LMCD, what is it, the water people? DNR, MCWD, sorry, I'm in alphabet soup here. Yeah, DNR, yeah, et cetera. And let's see, on page 1410, line item number 2, they're discussing that. We have, I guess, on our agenda for later, discussion from the Harrison Bay Group, which has identified invasive species which have been identified in the lake. Part of the approval process with the watershed district and the DNR is a requirement about the amount of gallons that are actually being able to be used, as well as if there has been an invasive species identified in the lake, then there are some additional guidelines and restrictions. So I'm a little concerned that we might be approving something before we get the proper approvals from the governing entities that take care of the lake.
I mean, I feel like that would be something that either Jesse, you can add to, or we should get Sarah to comment, because we do go through all the paperwork, and usually we can't pass anything unless everything has been approved.
Right. I would add, and maybe actually Matt might be able to speak to this a little bit too, because we do that, on pretty much any of our permits and our projects, there are those types of conditions. And I think it would be, so if you notice, the MCWD, I believe, was involved in this one. They reviewed it, but the practical nature of some of these organizations reviewing all of our permits prior to them being issued is, I think, a little more difficult. So we issue them with conditions to say, basically, if you can't get these approvals, if they're necessary, because sometimes they're not. I mean, they might go to the DNR, and the DNR might say, this is upland, it's not our purview. It's just more practical from our end to say, here's all your things, and we sort of put it on the applicant then. They need to demonstrate if they needed to get that permit, that they've received it, and if they don't, then they no longer have permission to operate underneath the permit that we've issued. So it could be a little chicken or the egg sounding.
Right.
I don't know, if we said you can't even apply to us until you have a DNR permit, they may not even be able to achieve a DNR permit without
Okay,
them. So,
that's fair.
so that, Matt, that sounds about right?
Yeah, that pretty well sums it up.
Okay, and what recourse do we have or follow-up to make sure that they do get the appropriate permits from the DNR?
They would need to demonstrate that, so that would enter the file, like the property file, they would
Okay.
send everything in, it all gets taken, it gets put in the jacket and stays with the property, and then if they lose that permit, or if they don't meet those conditions that may be set upon them by the DNR or the watershed or something, then we could pull that because they're operating within our public land.
Right, on our public land. Okay. All right, that was the question that I had.
Cool. Okay. All right. Any further discussion on E? All right. I will take a motion to approve agenda item E.
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item E.
Okay. Have a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. So that will take care of all the consent agenda and the other two items. We will move on to agenda item number 5.
Okay.
I think you have something.
Yeah, so this agenda item is an open forum for comments and suggestions from citizens regarding any item not on the agenda. If you are bringing any item to the city council's attention, please state your name and address for the record. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Please also note that if your comments relate to the Harrison's Bay Lake Improvement District It is an agenda item, and the open forum comments are not the appropriate forum. That's all.
Okay.
Can you explain that there'll be a public hearing?
Well, there's going to be a public hearing probably in August. So maybe what I'll do too is I will provide the comment that I was going to do for that item 8. So coming up later in the agenda, there is a presentation of the lid petition by the Harrison's Bay Association and related information. This is informational only and is not a public hearing. There's going to be no action taken by the city council tonight. It's all going to be information provided. Because this is not a public hearing and no action will be taken, it is not the intent to have any public comment. The city council will be holding a public hearing on this matter that is anticipated to be at the city council's first meeting in August. At that meeting, public comment regarding the matter will be presented to the city, can be presented to the city council with a public hearing. Please note that in the agenda, there's letters and materials that are part of the agenda, and that's just informational only. I wanted to, where was it? And under Minnesota rules, at least 21 days prior to that public hearing, notice is going to be given to, there's an attempt to give notice to every resident or every resident owner within the proposed district. So notice will be going out at least 21 days prior to that public hearing. That, as I said, it was anticipated to be in August.
Okay. Yeah, we don't know first or second meeting, but just not for a ways off yet.
What looking at because of where we are in the process and the fact that it's a 21-day notice period, that the first meeting in August is probably the most likely, but notice will go out.
Okay. Okay. So I guess we'll move forward with number 5, comments and suggestions for anything not on the agenda. If anyone would like to come forward, now would be the time.
Tyler Piper, 5504 Church Road. Coming to you not at my Parks Commission position, but as an adopter of one of the gardens in Belmont. I just wanted to note, and it was kind of a bummer, I don't see the police guy here today, or no. Several of the, 4 of the metal poles put out by the city crew were snapped, and this is the 3rd instance I'd put out 2 different sets of poles at the garden just to mark them not being mowed over. And there's just been a few minor things, so was just gonna ask if it would be within their schedule to hopefully, don't have to do too much, but just maybe a few drive-bys by the park, just to let people know that, we have a presence there, just to hopefully, using a garden metaphor, nip any further vandalism in the bud, so.
Like it was like they got snapped because they were mowing or someone broke them.
Oh, someone definitely broke them, which was impressive. These are metal poles, so I don't know
Wow.
how they managed to snap them clean, but impressive or not, it is kind of a bummer. So just wanted to pass it on. Otherwise, thank you all for your work.
Great,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Tyler.
All right. If no one else has anything, we'll move on to agenda item number 6. If they're, if we can move past that one or,
Yeah, it sounds like there was a need for police presence in a different jurisdiction.
okay, so if they,
So Ryan, or Sergeant Spencer, was going to make every attempt to be here, but it looks like he's still needed over there, so.
okay, so
maybe
in the
he'll still-
event that he comes in later, we can kind of fit him in or just,
Right,
Yeah.
whatever, however the council wants to handle it.
okay. All right, so we'll table number 6 or just kind of move beyond that for now. Number 7, tour de Tonka presentation.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jenny Bedurka. I work with Minnetonka Community Education and Tour de Tonka, who puts on that event. So we will once again be coming through your wonderful city for our event, which will be on August 2nd. So I have a short presentation just to give you some updates on that. This year is our 20th anniversary of Tour de Tonka, which is amazing. And so we're doing some fun things to celebrate. We have some specific merchandise that'll be about the 20th anniversary. We'll, at our registration at Minnetonka High School, we'll have kind of an archive display of shirts and photos through the years. And we also have a group of people that we call legacy riders, and they are folks who have been either a volunteer or a participant all of the events over the last 20 years, so it's about 48 of them. And so we will be celebrating that group with a big photo at the start line of the event. So if you go on to the next slide, as I've probably shared with many of you before, we have a lot of great sponsors that make this event happen. We try to make it cost effective for people to be able to participate, and these wonderful sponsors help us to do that, and they also provide us a lot of support around the event. So Shields will have some bike mechanics out on the route helping support, and Domino's will be serving pizza at the finish line, just to name a few, but a lot of great sponsor support there. You can go on to the next slide. Each year we do have a new shirt, and the style of this shirt is kind of a throwback to the first year of the event that we held. So we're excited about those, and all of our participants will receive a shirt. We also need a lot of volunteers to make this event happen, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but they also receive a shirt as well that they can wear. So to talk a little bit about registration, we expect about 2,500 participants on our different routes. Right now we have about 850 registrations, running a little bit ahead of where we typically are at this time. Riders from all across the country and 113 cities here in Minnesota. So we draw a good crowd from afar, and many from right in our community as well. We do have 5 ride distances for participants to choose between, starting as low as 16 miles, going up to as high as 100 miles. And this is a little bit of a breakdown of right now who's registered. So that's fairly typical. Most of those who are riding 100 miles are planning and training, so they have signed up. And some of our shorter distances, they may wait till a little closer and see what their availability is. Updates about the routes. Again, I said we have 5 distances. The routes that come through this area are the 40 mile and the 58 mile. We also have a rest stop at Bethel United Methodist Church, and huge shout out to them because they have been a wonderful sponsor of that rest stop for many years, and many of their congregation members get really into it, and they're out there cheering on the crowd and the riders, so we really appreciate their support. We'll be traveling through 4 counties, 25 cities, and riding on 143 unique roads. So we cover a lot of ground, as this map will show you here. Those shorter distances stay close to Minnetonka High School, and then we spread out. Our 100-milers are going all the way out to Delano and Winstead, Waconia, kind of making a big loop, and then you'll kind of see that red is those 40 and 58 milers that'll be coming through this area. Volunteers, as I shared, this is a huge undertaking, and we need lots of volunteers in lots of different capacities to help support it. Probably have over 600 volunteers, whether it's helping with registration, standing on a corner, helping direct traffic, working at one of our rest stops, handing out food, or just cheering on the riders. It's kind of something for everyone in terms of time commitment and activity. So if anyone is interested, they can go to our Minnetonka Community Education website, look up Tour de Tonka, or scan this QR code, and there'll be a link where you can see what the opportunities are and sign up to volunteer. As part of Tour de Tonka, we have a strong partnership with our local ICA food shelf. And a portion of every registration goes to support them, and then we also have other ways that we connect and help support the ICA. And to date, we've raised over $100,000 for them, and that has so much buying power for those who are kind of familiar with that. They get to buy at wholesale cost, so we've been able to really make a huge community impact with that. A huge thank you to our law enforcement and safety partners. As you can imagine, all of the miles we're traveling, we're crossing some main roads and busy locations, so we work really closely with law enforcement in all of the cities that we're traveling through to help support those key corners along with the volunteers. So lots of just comments from volunteers or from participants about their thanks for that law enforcement support. And those are really all of the updates I have for you. Will be August 2nd at Minnetonka High School is where we'll begin, or at Clear Springs Elementary, which is very close, but hoping those in the community and those here will be interested to join us in some capacity, and thank you for your continued support.
And thank you for our gift.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Again this year.
Enjoy, yes.
It's fun to see each year what you
Yeah,
bring, and we
yes.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, yeah. Any questions I can answer?
When is the deadline to sign up for riding?
You can register as late as the morning of the event.
Oh.
So we do
All right.
have on-site, same-day registration, and so registration's open now, but you can go register all the way through the day of the event.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
Good luck, thank you.
All right. I think we can move on to agenda item number 8, Harrison Bay Lake Improvement District presentation.
Good evening, council members and Mr. Mayor. Do I need to put up quote fingers for that?
Quote, yeah.
Playing the mayor tonight.
Fake.
Thank you for the time on the agenda. How do you follow the ride Tonka? Super exciting, although 100 miles seems a little daunting when I think about that. I was hoping maybe there's a loop that goes around Jubilee and goes back to our home on
That's my loop.
5513 Sherwood Drive. See how
That's my loop.
No, but exciting, super cool to see that. I want to thank the council for your support for the relationship that we've been able to build over the last 4 years plus with the Harrisons Bay Association. It's been an exciting time. We want to keep that momentum going. We know that your agenda is always full. We saw it tonight, and it was full, so we appreciate the time. We're going to try to make best use of that. Sherry Wallace, our chair, who's here tonight, came back in the early part of the year in January, kind of gave you a teaser that we were thinking about developing a strategy around a LID, around a lake improvement district. And we're here tonight to do what Scott talked about earlier, give you a little bit of overview of your packet with hundreds of pages of materials in there, give you some information around how that LID works, why we're pursuing it. We're going to talk through some slides. Sherry's going to come up and share a few things as well, and then we'll obviously entertain questions along the way at the end, whatever makes sense for you. Do want to also thank volunteers at the association. We've benefited from a tremendously enthusiastic group of volunteers. You see many of them in the audience tonight. Even for a non-public hearing, they're here to show support, wear their Harrison's Bay swag. They've been out canvassing in neighborhoods, talking about the LID initiative, educating folks, having great conversations for almost 3 months, and really learning a lot about what the Bay feels should happen, could happen, and what the future might look like. Well, I also want to thank folks who have brought concerns or questions. We've had a really active dialogue and conversation over the last 60 days or so, and even beyond that. And we really believe iron sharpens iron. We want to make sure whatever strategy we pursue is going to represent all the interests in the community, so that's something that we welcome as well. If you can move to that next slide. So why are we here? It's that beautiful picture that we see up there right now, Lake Minnetonka. It's one of the most visited, most traveled bodies of water in the state of Minnesota. And we've got 10,000 of them, but we're distinguished to have one of them that's in our backyard that's one of the best. It's really the center of lake life experience in Mound in a lot of ways. A lot of folks moved here to be able to experience lake life, whether you live on a lake shore, live close to it, don't live near it, but use it quite often. It's one of those things that we believe is just a tremendous asset to this community. And we really want to make sure that we're protecting that. To date, the responsibility for managing and trying to take care of that bay has really fallen on a few, fallen on folks that use that bay, lakeshore owners. There really aren't assigned individuals who are out there doing actually what the DNR recommends that we do to try to protect that lake. So we need some help, and that's what we're here to talk a little bit about. Next slide. The challenges that are out there. If you don't know, Harrison's Bay is documented and tagged with the label of an impaired body of water by the MPCA, and it really has been something that's been out there for quite a bit of time. There hasn't been a marked improvement in that tag as an impaired waterway for a long time. We share that with a lot of other bays on this end of the lake, with West Arm and with Jennings, Halstead, several that really benefit or don't benefit from the runoff that comes from the west. And a lot of that farm pollution that comes in and has been loading the lake for a long time. We've got invasive species, AIS, aquatic invasive species. We've talked about that before over the last 4 years. We've had lots of opportunity to try to attack those and try to learn more about what the challenge is. We know they come in the form of invasive vegetation, milfoil, curly-leaf pondweed, things that are not natural to the lake and are attacking it. We know it comes in the form of invasive carp. If you've been anywhere near the lake in the last 3 weeks, you've seen the carp frolicking quite actively in their spawning time. Zebra mussels, and then all of those things lead to a challenging environment in that lake habitat, which drives low oxygen, drives harmful blue-green algae blooms that really make it difficult to use that lake the way that most of our community residents think they want to. And the other thing that really happens is it's challenging for those native plants, native species to thrive, to grow. That's something that we want to try to have a positive impact on. Next slide. Why a lake improvement district? I think if you talk to anybody who lives on the lake or near the Harrison's Bay, we really believe that the bay is worth investing in. It's one of those great investments that folks make in coming out to Lake Country. We've talked to a lot of folks who say, hey, I really work on trying to improve my property, my home, my grass, my garden, my neighborhood. I want it to look great. I want to invest in my community. But one of those things that they just don't have control over is that body of water that a lot of us use. It's really difficult to try to have an influence and increase the quality of that water, increase the health of that water. We really believe that one of the messages we hear over and over again is that this is a legacy experience. Folks want to have their home be 2 or 3 generations or 4 generations worth. Even if it's not them, they want the next family, the next resident to move in and be able to use that lake. This is a legacy strategy. Sustainable property and community value. There's a tremendous amount of property value in the community of Mound, but specifically around Harrison's Bay. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. Investing in that value, maintaining it, increasing it, really benefits everyone. We want to increase recreation, whether you're out there kayaking, swimming, fishing, just boating, just sitting and watching loons. We still have loons at this time of the year. Actually, I can't believe it. I thought they'd all go north. I heard one this morning out making calls on Harrison's. We also believe that there's a benefit within a lid of being able to pursue grant money. You're going to hear me talk a little bit about the challenge around funding. There is grant money available, but it's scarce, and not-for-profit organizations are not as successful as organized, structured, LGU-backed organizations like a lid when you're out there talking about getting grant money for specific projects, because they know there's structure, they know there's oversight, there's governance, there's track record, and there's teams of folks that are helping control that. And then, certainly one of the other challenges we see is that there are limited viable alternatives. We've got some entities around the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District, the DNR, the Lake Minnetonka Association. LMCD has suspended all of their grants for AIS in improvement on water quality for this year. So that well has dried up. The DNR is decreasing all of their funding for AIS projects in 2025, statewide for 10,000 lakes. And we all know that's a short number. And all the rivers and bodies of water that we have, there's only $400,000 total for funding across the entire state coming from the DNR. So a lot of challenges around alternatives to getting the community involved, building a reusable, sustainable funding source from that community, and then going out and really tackling these efforts with the guidance of the DNR, with the guidance of our subject matter experts. Right now, one of the frustrations that folks have, 0%, $0 out of your property tax goes to that thing in your backyard or in your community that we call Harrison's Bay and Lake Minnetonka. $0 go to try to improve that. And we can see the impact when nothing happens. Invasive species get out of control, runoff gets out of control, water quality decreases, property value decreases. Next slide. So the objectives of the lid. We want to work, and this seems like a lofty goal, but we do believe it's very possible. It's happened in the past. We want to work on getting Harrison's Bay off that impaired list. It's really challenging to know that we've been there a long time, and there's a lot of things that are out of our control. There's a lot of things that we have to deal with, but we want to have that aspirational goal of getting Harrison's Bay off the impaired list and improving that water quality. We want to align and continue to align with the MPCA, the MCWD for water quality strategies, what they're trying to accomplish, how they're doing it, what they're suggesting for communities to pursue. We want to make sure that native vegetation has a chance to grow by removing all those invasive species. We want to make sure native fish and wildlife surrounding Harrison's Bay all have a chance to thrive and follow DNR guidelines to make sure that those conditions are present. One of the other big components is critical here. This is community education. You're going to hear that we've got 233 properties that are included in the lid boundary that we defined. Educating every one of those folks around how to better manage runoff, how to use rain barrels, how to leverage rain gardens, how to manage effectively the runoff from their property, how to do sustainable, friendly gardening for the lake. That's a big piece of this initiative as well. We want to manage those invasive species, again, with the guidance of the DNR and the subject matter experts across the state. And then we want to help promote healthy fish populations and wildlife around the bay. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about that impaired status on the bay. If you've been around for a while, you know that the MPCA and the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District used to use an A through F grade for the waters. Now they use a grade that includes poor as the D grade basically on their schedule. That is where Harrison's Bay sits with the most recent 15-year average water quality rating at a poor status. So certainly we want to move from a D or a poor up the scale, get it to a better spot, and we think that all those goals will improve. By contrast, on the next slide, Carmen Bay has actually been able to deliver an excellent or exceptional water quality, so an A water quality. This is a bay, if you're familiar with it, that was plagued by invasive species. They actually pursued a lid in 2017, established that lid, and have actively been engaging the community to bring dollars into that lid, pursue strategies around invasive species, pursue strategies around water quality, and now they're seeing the results of that. And we actually heard a lot of testimony directly from folks that are part of that Carmen's Bay lid, and you will be able to hear those folks as well. We've got representatives lined up for that public hearing when it gets scheduled with the Mound City Council. So it can happen, and I'm not comparing those bays saying they're apples to apples. Every bay has its own challenges. We all have our own runoff. We all have our own depth and shoreline and incoming creeks, but this is something that we should target. We should target trying to move up that chain from a water quality perspective, and it's possible. Next slide, yeah, thank you. What we've done so far, this was the thank you up front. You've helped partner with the Harrison's Bay Association, connected us with resources, listened to some of our strategies. We've really been able to get out there and work with the DNR, work with the University of Minnesota invasive species teams to say how can we treat most effectively those invasive species. The first challenge was to go out there and find out how big the problem was. We've actively funded carp surveys, electrofishing to study carp in the bay, as well as neighboring bays, West Arm and Jennings. We've actively gone out there and pursued and funded plant surveys and aquatic species surveys, which you have to do as part of that DNR license and permitting process in order to actually treat, and you can only treat where those surveys find those invasive species. We've partnered on the rain barrel initiative, sold over 324 rain barrels. There's 324 homes now that are taking 55 gallons at a time out of the runoff into lakes and filtering them through their grass, through their plants before they get there. That's a huge win. We've got an educational website with deep links out there. We've even got one of the head botanists for the U of M and the Arboretum program, Julie Weisenhorn, in our community, and she's actively helping us with content on that education side. And I talked about lake-friendly gardening. One of the other big components of our precursor efforts here was to build partnerships. Beyond just the one that we have in the room here with you at the City of Mound, we've worked with the MCWD, the MPCA, the LMA, the LMCD. How many acronyms can I list on one page here? U of M AAS program, organizations like Two Mics that take carp and turn them into liquid fertilizer, which is sold at True Value and around the state. Carp Solutions, PLM, the Minnesota Bow Fishing Association. How can we go after cost-efficient techniques to reduce that carp population? Let's get bow fishing folks involved, enthusiasts involved, so they can go out there and reduce that carp for free and work us out of a problem. So a lot of exciting partnerships we've been able to pursue. We think they're critical. And on the right side in that box is an important piece of this. These are all funded by volunteer dollars coming in and activities from Harrison's Bay Association, folks in the community that said, this is important to me. but that is not sustainable. That's challenging. These are expensive projects, and we've got some big ones in the future. Next slide, please. Proposed programs, as part of the LID proposal, the DNR requirements for putting a LID proposal on the table, you have to actually have programs out there. We had a nice head start because we've pursued a lot of these already, and we've got some momentum around each one of these. But the defined programs that you will see in your packet include treatment through a strategic invasive vegetation plan that we will develop with the DNR and LVMP. Carp management, bow fishing, and other strategies around carp reduction. We've talked about it a little bit before, but Harrison's Bay specifically, through our electrofishing studies, has 4 times the healthy population of carp in the bay. That's over 10,000 fish, and that really creates problems as far as water quality. We will be actively pursuing grants. I talked about the fact that they're limited. The dollars are limited, but that doesn't mean we don't want to get out there and chase them, pursue them actively, use the resources we have to try to grab those, use those dollars, get them invested with some ROI into Harrison's Bay. Shoreline restoration and runoff efforts. You've partnered with us on those, Cardinal Lane and many of the other projects around end of street rain gardens. That's part of this LID initiative, how we can really pursue keeping that runoff on shore. Education on sustainable lakeshore management, and then monitoring water quality. Those are the programs that we're proposing would be supported by this LID. If you go to the next slide, yeah, this is another component of the proposal for the LID, is identifying the LID boundaries. So we took a look at folks that have been participating in Harrison's Bay. We took a look at natural breaks across our body of water. Obviously, all bays flow across 37 different bays in Lake Minnetonka, but a natural break really occurs from that west side of Seton Channel across to the point on Centerview, or on 3 Points. And you see the properties identified in a couple different categories. We've got lakeshore property owners, or PIDs. We have deeded access, folks who have access to a dock. We have associations, and then we have our single marina in Metro Lakes. Incredibly important commercial partner, and the ability for boats to get in and out of Metro Lakes without clogging up their engines and run into invasive species is a huge part of their ability to be successful, so partnering with them will be a big part of our strategy as well. If you look across all the properties that are on that LID, the average property value is over $1 million, $1,056,000 and $114 to be exact, $111, sorry. Looking at what we're proposing for the annual assessment that would go to those LID properties, which is $150 at the high side for just the lakeshore, that's 0.014%, so 1/100th% against that property value. So we really believe this is a very reasonable investment for folks to make, and that they want to make to get ROI in improving that water quality. And it's not a burden that we're looking to place on the community. It's a way to invest, drive ROI, bring that legacy value back to those properties as well. So I'm going to hand off now. Oh, actually, no, I'm not quite yet. Sorry, I got a couple more. And then you can stop listening to me babble on. Some other things that are really critical that I think we share an interest are the public entities, the components of Harrison's Bay that are part of the city of Mound that folks utilize quite actively. We've got a public beach on Centerview that is quite active year-round, whether we're talking about winter or summer, or spring or fall. We've got 2 parks, 92 common docks, and 2 launches. All of those fall within the property boundaries of the LID and would benefit from the strategies that we're pursuing and have been benefiting from the strategies that HBA has pursued with the community even without the LID in place. So we do think there's shared value, there's aligned motivation to try to drive a shared funding source that can keep a consistent effort investing back in the Bay. Next slide, a little bit about the process. This is a high-level view. There's much more detail in your packet. But really the LID is a community-run organization. It's a community-directed initiative to try to bring resources together, decide in a common way what's most important, and then pursue those things. The process starts out at a high level with the LID board, and we'll talk about that in a second, working with the community as subject matter experts to develop projects and the associated budget that goes with those projects, and then go out to property owners who are all on that map that you just saw, educate folks around those proposed projects, what the budget is for that year, what that would mean as it translates into that year's assessment. This assessment doesn't remain the same every year. That's a misconception sometimes. It can move depending on what needs to happen in the lid for that, in the lid property for that year. All the lid property owners are invited to participate and attend that annual meeting, that where those projects are reviewed, that budget is reviewed, and they're able to vote whether those are projects they want to support or not. And there has to be a majority support to get those projects and that budget approved. If not, go back to the drawing board, pursue adjustments to that budget, and come back with something that the lid property owners can support. PID allocation, so once that allocation is approved, then those assessments are set up through the 2 collections for annual property taxes in May and October. Those dollars come in just like property taxes would. They're pooled. The city would help out with some of the administrative funds movement to get that into a funding source that the lid controls. And then projects would happen throughout that year, and annual reporting would go back out to the city of Mound and other interested parties and constituents. So that's kind of the basic process. We did talk with finance director at the city of Orono, who has experience with lid activities, and she gave us an estimate that really management, once it's up and running, of a lid from a city resource perspective is only about 2 hours annually. So not a huge burden from a time perspective. It really is that oversight, the pass-through of the finances, and then helping with guidance on partnerships. Next slide. Annual budget, expected revenue. So what we have been able to do, again, I talked about that head start that we've had with 4 years of activity on the Bay. We've been able to watch historically, what does it cost to treat curly-leaf pondweed? What does it cost to treat milfoil? What does it cost to drive education around sustainable gardening and why rain barrels make sense? What does it cost to maintain a website? What does it cost to get out and communicate with folks and really get the word out? And we believe that a budget of about $31,750 would be a starting place. Again, this can vary, right? What we've seen over and over, talking with lids that are established, like St. Albans and Carmen Bay, that if they don't need full funding that year, they could actually have a 0 assessment, or anywhere in between 0 and what the average might be. This is a ballpark start based on our historical information on what we've spent. And we think represents the key things that we're trying to pursue from a budget perspective. Next slide. I talked a little bit about the different categories on the map. So looking at that budgeted amount that we're trying to pursue that would help support some of those projects, looking at an annual assessment that would be less than burdensome and fair for those properties, and maybe is a little bit different depending on where you are in the PID boundaries. Lakeshore, we're recommending a $150 annual assessment. Channel or deeded access, a $100 assessment. Non-lake abutting associations, a $50 assessment, and then our one commercial marina, a $500 assessment. We did also get a lot of feedback as we walked through. I talked about iron sharpening iron. One thing, and we're all residents, right? We all pay property tax, that folks were concerned about is this a never-ending new tax that I've got to deal with? Is the track record I've seen sometimes of it non-stop increases to property taxes going to be the same with this one? And we said we really don't want that to be the case. So we actually included in the proposal 100% max on any increase in the annual assessment from this first level that we're recommending over the life of the lid. So that Lakeshore assessment could never be more than $300. If any change is pursued on that, you would have to go back and have a majority of the PID property owners to approve that increase over that max level of $300. And we don't anticipate it getting there, but we wanted to make sure we leave room if the cost of treatment goes up, if the cost of materials go up. And again, our experience has been in talking to other lids that those variances go up and down, but the better job you do at managing those invasive species, the more likely it is that you're going to have a lower assessment the year after that, the year after that. So those are some of the basics around the assessments. Couple more slides here, and then I'm going to hand it off to Sherry. As far as the board of directors go, we're recommending, and this is in line with the DNR recommendations as well, 5 to 7 volunteer directors. The initial board is appointed by the city council. You as the local government unit, the LGU, we would give you recommendations on folks that are interested, have experience, We can vet those and then appoint that initial board. After that point, every year as part of the annual meeting, board members would have to be elected by the participants in the lid. We're recommending 2-year alternating terms so we don't have everybody in the board drop off in a given year. We want to make sure we've got some carryover. That board of governors or that board of directors would be responsible for writing those initial bylaws in alignment with the lid. We really feel strongly that they would need to represent all of the unique neighborhoods around Harrison's Bay. Again, one of the head starts we've had, we've identified 12 different neighborhoods around the lake where we have skippers, we call them skippers, who are really captains for that neighborhood. And we really believe that it's critically important that every one of those has some representation in general of that area on this board. And we're going to invite folks to participate in that. We want the board to really actively focus on maintaining key partnerships. There's going to be no compensation. This is still a totally volunteer board. Folks are investing their own personal equity in this effort. And certainly this is going to be a key part of where the lid goes in the future. Next slide. A lot of questions around, well, what regulates a lid? There are a tremendous amount of guardrails around how a lid operates. The guardrails around how treatment is pursued within the lid. This is not a group of community members going out there and on their own identifying how to treat and which chemicals to use at what concentration. All of those projects are governed by a partnership with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and their rules. The Lake Minnetonka Conservation District ordinances, they all have to be followed. City of Mound ordinances all have to be followed when pursuing initiatives regardless of which one on the list. And DNR, as they have up to this point and with all of the other treating bays across Lake Minnetonka, they provide guidance and the permitting on that AAS treatment. So this is, again, not the lid or the community members determining that. We operate within the guidelines of those governing bodies. Lastly, today we're going to be handing off signatures. That's part of the process. The hard work of the folks in the room and others who have been out pounding the pavement, having those conversations, getting the feedback, answering questions, talking about those concerns and challenges, has produced 60% approval status and signed signatures. The bar to reach to actually present this lid was 50%, so we've exceeded that. Hard to see the legend over there, but 14% have outright declined and said, we're not going to sign that, and this is why. 3% are neutral, have said, boy, we love what the HBA is doing, but we're not going to sign the initiative, we're not for it or against it, we're just neutral. 11% have not been able to make contact through efforts, either mailing, stopping by, knocking on doors. We've got a lot of seasonal folks. Some people are coming back, second homes. So difficult to get contact with those folks, but have made effort with every single one of the properties. And then no response. We've made contact, had a conversation, but have not had a response yet back one way or another. So that's kind of the status of the signatures that you'll be reviewing, and we're continuing that dialogue. We've got some time here between now and when that public hearing happens. We're having those conversations. We're inviting folks to open houses, sitting down, educating through our website, trying to make sure that we're hitting every point of view out there and bringing that information in as we fine-tune this proposal. So I'll thank you for my time. I'm going to invite Sherry Wallace to come up and talk a little bit about some of the concerns that we know have surfaced. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Sherry Wallace, 2135 Overland Lane. Not sure if I need to do that or not. I think I do. Thank you all. I mean, thank you for your support. Thank you. I'm happy to be here today. I think I said in January, I may or may not be back. Well, I'm back. So I appreciate your need for facts. And I want to start by saying, in today's world, in our political arena, if I have a point of view and I wanted to support it, all I need to do is Google it, right? And I'm going to find information out there. I'm going to find both sides of the issue out there. And we believe, HBA believes, that it's important for you to hear this information from trusted partners. So who is that for you guys, right? In your packet, I listed who we use, who are trusted. I gave names and stuff within the packet. This might be something where you want a work session on, you know, to deal with some of the concerns. But what I'm going to highlight here is maybe some of the things we have heard. When we started this in January, we didn't know it was going to be so controversial. We thought taking care of the lake was just, you know, something people could get behind. And 60% of people have gotten behind it. You also will find in your packet the Get the Facts document. So what we tried to do is break it down. I'm not going to go through all of those. But there's links in there. We even had an interview with the expert consultant for AIS at the DNR. And we have the link to that video on harrisonsbay.org. It was eye-opening, so I was able to ask him questions, and then you can hear directly from him. He also was a head researcher for AIS at the University of Minnesota Research Center. So good information, not, you know, knowing that you're not going to we're not biologists, right? And we recognize that we need to rely on other people to provide information to us. So with that, I'm just going to start with a couple of things that have come up. The first one, if you could go to the next slide. The first one is around the bay treatments, right? So right now, the Lake Minnetonka Association has, I don't know what the number is, how many bays they're actually treating, but
It's 14, sorry.
it's 14? Thank you. And then ours is 15, or are we part of the room?
That's for the LMA specific, so we would be a 15.
We're, so 15 bays. These bay-wide treatments have been happening over the last 10 years. And based on their information, they have seen and tracked the return of the natives and the impact that these treatments are having. And they have exceeded expectations as far as providing native plant diversity and as a rebounding diversity. So the bay-wide treatments not only are effective with the Eurasian milfoil and the curly-leaf pondweed, but every year plant surveys are done at the end of the season to see what is actually in the bay and tell us whether we're losing species, whether we have new species within the bay. So those surveys, point intercept surveys, are done every year. Regarding the herbicides that are used, the DNR only uses herbicides that are approved by the EPA and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And that's really important because they're the ones that have the scientists that have the information. They're testing it. In fact, on the video with Mike Verhoeven, he says, in regards to dicot, because I think that's been one that's really kind of been the big one, is because it's banned in Europe. Well, it's banned in Europe in agricultural use. Okay, so dicot is used in different forms. But there was also a study done in 1990 on dicot that did show that the concentrations on dicot that were used in the water were having a negative impact on walleye fry. And that was very, very specific. And after that point, the label was changed on dicot to reduce the amount of chemicals that are being used. So the applicators that we're hiring, they are licensed applicators approved by the DNR, and they have to, and in your packet, along with our as part of the proposal to the DNR, there are all the surveys that we've done. So we survey it, but you'll also see that the applicators have to track via GPS exactly where they treat. So they're only treating the areas that are surveyed and approved via permit. So it's a very precise treatment at a very precise concentration. And I think that's important to use versus me treating around my dock and having hydrothol or whatever that aquathol or whatever they're called, right? And it tells me that per gallon of water, I can use so much, and I'm supposed to figure out that concentration when I sprinkle this around my dock. So these are trained professionals. They're insured applicators. And the lid ultimately decides what type of control is being used. So let's say at a certain point in time, the acreage comes down on what we're treating, then maybe cutting it or pulling it becomes more reasonable. Right now, we took and extrapolated the cost of pulling for the acreage that we had. It would cost something like $900,000 for one treatment of pulling the curly leaf. I mean, it's not something you could ever afford to do at a lake-wide level. So just some background. So that's on basically the invasive weeds. Next slide. I wanted to show you, so Bart talked about this a little bit, that over time, the objective is, especially with curly leaf, because these pods live for a period of 7 years in the bottom of the lake, is to reduce the amount of treatment that needs to be done. Joan Mayer was going to be here tonight, but she had a family emergency. She's St. Albans Bay. She's on the board of St. Albans Bay, and she provided this information to us. This is a survey of their curly leaf in the spring of 2013. They had 92 acres of curly leaf mats in their bay. Next slide, please. In 2024, they have just over 10 acres. And so they went from treating 94 acres to treating 10 acres, and the cost went down significantly. They've actually had years where they have had no assessment at all. So that's the goal, right? The goal is to consistent management. Stubbs Bay, you know, if the residents are paying for it and you can't raise enough money, oftentimes you'll decide to only treat certain areas. And that what they were seeing is that the curly leaf would explode in the other areas that they're not treating. So it's this consistent surveying it, watching it, and treating it. It's never going to go away because we're open to other boats coming into our bay, right? So as long as Minnetonka has invasive species, Harrison's Bay will have invasive species. But it's a diligent monitoring that needs to be done. Next slide, please. So there were some other concerns that were brought up. I know the city is concerned about how many staff hours are going to be used. Again, Maggie Jin helped us out here and said that initial setup probably took them about 8 hours of resource time. And after that, you heard from Bart, it's only a couple hours a year. There's been a lot of talk about the liability of the lid. And I'm sure Scott can talk more about this to you and advise you on this. But per the DNR, and this was kind of a big thing because the question was, okay, now we're taking responsibility from the DNR for Harrison's Bay. And in talking to the DNR, they still maintain responsibility for Harrison's. We are simply performing projects approved by the DNR to improve the bay. We will hire licensed contractors that carry their own liability insurance and follow all guidelines laid out by the EPA and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Currently, HBA carries its own liability policy. I believe that is true with a lid, a lid will be responsible for liability insurance, and that'll be part of the budget for that. Use of experts. I mean, one of the ways that we get around, or we get good environmental practices is by making sure that we're consulting the resources. And we've established those contacts as far as those resources are concerned. That's a guiding principle. You know, James Whisker at the watershed. I currently sit on the Citizens Advisory Council for the watershed. We are advocating for projects at the watershed level that can benefit our side of Lake Minnetonka. And then the concern of uncontrolled lid assessments. And I think we've addressed that in that we have put a maximum on it. But the other thing is, this is run by residents, right? So me as a property owner, I don't want uncontrolled taxes. I don't want my taxes to go up. And that's, I think, where electing the right leaders is important at the lid level. So, so what's next? Here, next slide. We talked about it a little, mentioned it a little bit, but it's to schedule a public meeting. I have delivered 140, well, more than 140 petitions, but 140 residents' signatures to Jesse. And the job is to verify those signatures. Hopefully I made it easy for him as far as going around the lake. The DNR has been, the proposal has been submitted to the DNR. Their job is to review the proposal and provide comments to you. Is our scope right? Do we include the right things? Those kinds of things, an advisory document to you. Of course, we talked about announcing the meeting, getting citizen feedback, and then ultimately a vote on the issue. So with that, HBA, the board, believes that we've accomplished good things in the Bay. Our focus is not just invasive weeds, but we're really taking a holistic view. We want it to be about water quality and the general health of the Bay. We want this to continue for generations, and that is why we're looking at a sustainable funding option. We appreciate your time, your consideration, and at this point, happy to answer any questions that you have. That was a lot.
Well, I don't know where to start.
Okay.
As expected, it's a very articulate and well-researched presentation for us, which I appreciate. I expected nothing less. I guess I've supported almost all of your efforts.
Yeah.
For me, I don't live on Harrison Bay. I live on a different bay, and we don't have a lid. I know that I would most likely, I don't know if I'd be supportive of a lid, but as a council member, we're elected to represent all of the residents in Mound.
Right.
My concern is the governance of this. I just feel there could be a lot of issues with conflict of interest. I'm concerned that if we get involved with this, it implies to our residents that we're comfortable with this new level of bureaucracy and taxation that we have no oversight over whatsoever. I'm uncomfortable. Like, who would be electing your board of directors?
The
You're
residents.
asking us to?
No, the residents would elect the first board is appointed by the city. And at Stubbs Bay just, I don't know if you know this, but Stubbs Bay just passed their lid last night.
Yeah.
And they had submitted a recommended board list to them.
But you know, that becomes the conflict of interest for me. Of course, you're gonna be presenting us with directors that agree with your agenda. So I just feel like it's a really slippery slope for the city of Mound to get involved with the lid. You know, if Harrison Bay chooses to do it, and I know that the structure of this lid you're trying to do has to go through Mound. I feel like Mound is just a money clearinghouse, but it implies to all the rest of the residents that we agree with whatever you guys decide, and it's, again, as I say, for me, a level of bureaucracy I'm really uncomfortable with.
So one of the things that the DNR told me about a lid is that it has, the activities have to stay within the proposed scope, so within the proposed objectives. And there's oversight. So 60% of the residents have said they like this idea, okay? Those residents have a voice. They have a voice. So dissenting residents that want to run for the board and help set the direction of what we do and what we don't do, that they can do that, right? We're not, I mean, the only reason we would suggest a board, you could appoint somebody else, right, to be on the board that you felt would be able to, at least for the first year, could kind of oversee, or you could even appoint someone as a at-large member of the board.
I just don't see we as a council have any business being part of the lid. You know, we have, how many bays does Mound touch? And 2 lakes, Dutch and Langdon. I just feel like, where does this end?
It might not. I mean, maybe it's the new norm for Lake Minnetonka.
Well, I know that the LMA wants it to be the new norm. You know, they'd like a lid on every bay.
But LMA is out of it once the lid. We are not part of LMA, just so you know.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I also understand, because I've done plenty of research
Yeah.
too. And I know that the LMA would like to see, and the LMCD, a lid on every bay. So it could become the norm, but I feel it should be structured in a way that the cities, I don't feel that I'm very uncomfortable with the city of Mound being involved.
What kind of, can I ask Kathy,
Yeah.
what kind of, maybe 2 questions. What kind of?
When you come to the microphone, just so.
What kind of, just to elaborate on, what kind of oversight influence would you want to have on the lid in partnership with the community that's impacted by that? And then maybe give an example of a conflict of interest that you're concerned about.
Well, first of all, a conflict of interest, for example, you know, where do you get your chemicals? Diquat, and then the other chemical, let's see, that I noticed was, I gotta look it up.
Percellacor.
Yeah, Percellacor, which is a forever chemical.
It depends on
And
what you're
it's
reading.
also on the Minnesota Agriculture's list of being banned in the next 7 years. So I don't like seeing chemicals in the lake. I
Again,
hire,
yeah.
you know, people that come and pull them out, you know, local kids that come and pull them out for events that I have. The conflict of interest I see as that. Where do you get the chemicals from? As I was going through a lot of my research, on the LMA newsletter, at the bottom of it where it thanks all the community members and who donate, PLM is on that list. And isn't that where you get your chemicals? Is that who's
It's a
providing them?
proven licensed provider of applications.
No, I understand
that. The DNR endorses statewide, not just on Lake Minnetonka within LMA or a specific base. It's actually the entire state of Minnesota said, these are the hoops you need to jump through to be a proven licensed applicator. These are the chemicals that you can use within our guidelines, not for you to independently determine. So these are not folks that are only determined by Harrison's Bay to use and that are going to get a benefit from the lid. These are recommendations from the DNR at that level statewide around which chemicals should be used, at what concentrations, and by which applicators that have appropriate licensing.
I just start
So-
looking at who's in bed with each other, and I don't feel comfortable. I'm not even sure, I was on Minnewaska for 4 years before I moved here, and I've been on here for 34 years, and frankly, I'm not even sure if I feel confident that a lot of their treatments do what they should. They start out working, and then a new weed pops out, or.
I think it's a great debate. Here's what I heard at the Stubbs Bay discussion last night,
Last
sorry. I
night.
was there for 3.5 hours, listening to
Yeah.
the whole thing, all the back and forth. Tremendous amount of support from residents, huge support, 98%, 99% of folks supported it. The conversation wasn't about which chemicals we're using to treat these specific weeds. It was, our bay has an issue. Whatever solution comes up that is the most effective, most supported by the community, most aligned with the natural process that the DNR is trying to drive. Maybe it is just pulling. Maybe it is, hey, driving down and getting 100 people to go around the bay and pull the weeds. We want to have a structure that will support that. We're not promoting Procelicor or Diquat. We're promoting a community that says put a structure in place with governance, with a repeatable funding source that's very minimal as far as impact financially in the community, so that this can continue and the community can guide what happens. And we heard conversations from folks on Forest Lake last night. They got up and testified at the Stubbs Bay meeting during the open public hearing. And they said, hey, we pursued treatments across our bay, even without a lid. We eradicated milfoil. Oh, everybody's cheering. Coontail, which is a native species, came back into the bay, maybe brought in by a boat, or maybe it just thrived because the milfoil and the curlew were gone. You cannot treat coontail with chemicals. The DNR sets that guideline. So they're adjusting their strategy, and they're saying, how do we harvest it? How do we pull it? How do we use lake groomers? Everybody's going to chime in. So I don't want you to take the impression that this strategy is about Procelicor and Diquat and treating
Well, I'm
weeds.
not, but-
This
but
is
it's-
about
but it's-
finding a way to structure a arrangement that helps the bay actively engage and consistently engage and partner with the city.
And I appreciate, like I said, a lot of the efforts that
Sure.
the Harrison Bay has done. But, we're bombarded with toxic chemicals in our food, in our water, in our lotions,
Yeah.
everywhere. And I don't think I want to be swimming in a lake that's full of chemicals. And, I see it as a landslide. If all of a sudden a lid is on every bay and they're dumping chemicals in, when I know I'm on Priest Bay, and we all are very proactive with not using chemicals, having either the harvester come out or have mostly scuba divers, most of us use. But I feel like there's nobody that has a better vested interest than the homeowner
Sure.
on the
Yeah.
lake. And I'm concerned a little bit with, as I was looking at all your dots around Harrison Bay, why haven't you brought Spring Park, the townhouses on the channel into this at all? They're right at the edges.
One of the big
circling
challenges
Harrison.
is jumping to another LGU. So now you've got another city involved that has to go through the same lid process that we're going through now, that has very different characteristics than the city of Mound. Maybe
Well,
different challenges in place.
but-
We're trying to
but-
keep it simple and focus on a very manageable
But
set
all of a sudden,
residents.
these people are exempt from a lid because they live in Spring Park, even though they're on Harrison's Bay. It's like you're cherry picking who's going to be in the lid and who isn't. Let me ask you this. When you have everybody that puts in their tax or fee for 100 or 150, are you doing that? Do they all get one vote, or do the votes split between, like the marina? Do-
Everybody gets one vote. Everybody.
But then they all pay the same fee, and that you have a
Some
marina.
get maybe a better participation in the quality of the lake. Someone who has 150 feet of lakeshore versus someone who lives 2 blocks off the lake and has deeded access to a single slip on one dock. We really believed, as we structured the lid and discussing with the DNR and Kathy, that there is some room for trying to create a gradient there, because there is different values around the benefits you get. That 150-foot lakeshore, getting treated and having the ability to swim and beach and have grandkids frolic and have a healthy shore for fishing, gets a lot more benefit than a single dock. Why should we charge them the same? We really believe that there should be some gradient and benefit.
I
there.
agree that you should charge them all according to their property.
Sure.
But then I question, but then they all get the same vote. That makes no sense to me. So the marina gets one vote, and they're only paying $150.
The marina pays
But they have
$500.
X amount of number of boats that are out on the bay at all times. It just, I don't like the word fair, because that's a place we take our kids in the summer, but it doesn't seem equitable to me
Sure.
to involve all these people, and the 60% of the people who are interested in the lid, that's great. But the other 40%, suddenly they're burdened with a level of bureaucracy that clearly they don't want, or they're not responding.
These are really good challenges. I think what we're trying to do is bring something to the table. What's the alternative?
Yeah.
The alternative right now is nobody's doing it. LMCD is not managing it, LMA is not managing, the DNR has no funding. The bays will go the wrong direction. They will. We've seen it happen over and over again. Sherry talked a little bit about bays that have not been able to fund the treatments in a given, and then explosion. And 6 years worth of work goes out the door. You got to start over again with another 7-year set of seeds from curly leaf pondweed. We're really trying to bring a solution to the table. If there's alternate solutions, man, let's do them.
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
find a
have
way
you
to do
looked at
it.
any
But if we don't do
solutions that
anything.
require chemicals?
Yeah, well, like I maybe I didn't communicate it clear enough, but if chemicals are not the right solution for everybody on the bay, let's not do it. We're trying to look for a structure that helps the bay pursue solutions, not a specific solution.
So
Yeah.
we asked Mike Verhoeven about this, and it's on part of the video that we have on our website. But he said there are applications for the difference, so whether it be harvesting or pulling or chemical treatments. And depending on the situation, it may be appropriate. But when you're talking about treating 40-plus acres of curly leaf, those options are outside of what anybody could afford, right, on a larger area. And we're not looking to tax people out of their house with this initiative. We're looking at options, right? And I think that's, fiscally responsible. If you look at the information on these chemicals, at the concentrations that they're used on, they disappear from the water within 24 hours. They're undetectable. So they're contact herbicides. They put them in early in the season for curly leaf so that the natives can still come up even after the treatment. So there are studies done. These are the experts. This is the U of M, right? This is the U of M invasive vegetation, or AIS group, that is saying that depending on the problem, you have to come up with a cost-effective solution. And I'm sure you deal with that all the time, right? How are we going to fix this pipe? We could do it X or we could do it Y. It's all stuff that you have to consider. And so what we're talking about is a resident-run, resident-controlled, taking care of the bay and increasing the value, the recreational value and the health of the bay. No one else is doing that. No one else cares about Harrison's.
Well, I mean, again, if Harrison Bay votes for that, that's great. I am concerned about the city of Mound being involved.
Okay,
That's my
fair,
biggest
and that's
concern.
fair. And what I encourage you to do is talk to Excelsior,
I have talked to too many
Greenwood,
people.
talk to Orono.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all communities that have lids
Right.
right now.
Stubbs last night was talking about the number of bodies of water that are around Stubbs Bay. And in the community of Orono, there
Yeah.
are 40 or 50 bodies of water, plus rivers and streams and creeks. It was one of the concerns the city council and the mayor came up and said, well, this is an expansion concern. We need to think about this. And they unanimously approved it across the board without dissent.
I'm aware, and Stubbs Bay is worlds apart from Mound
Yeah.
in terms of exposure and
Right.
what they can all afford, whether or not any of them are even interested, other than allowing other people to take it on. But again, I appreciate
Valid,
so much
I mean,
that-
valid concerns, right? Kathy, I'm not trying to invalidate your concerns.
This is what we were hoping would happen tonight, Kathy. I just want you to make sure you're getting that. This is the conversation that needs to happen between now and the public hearing. To really hammer out things that you're concerned about. We want to have that working session or follow-up from tonight
Yeah.
to talk about the specific, concerns that you've got, the conflict of interest that you might envision, and kind of what we're doing to make sure we can control those and manage those adjustments to what the specific lid proposal looks like. You're going to get feedback, like Sherry said, from the
Yeah.
DNR that says, here's where they're off the mark, here's what this lines up with the other 54 lids that are up and functioning and have been since 1973 in Minnesota. There's a lot of track record on these things working and not burdening or not creating undue challenges for the LGU that supports them. In fact, there's support from the LGU to say, hey, we improved our asset. We increased the value of the community. We increased our tax values. Our property values went up. And we got happy people who live. We got 233 residences now. They're saying, wow, the city supported this. They helped us put a structure. They trusted us as residents to go out there and do something for the Bay that no one else cares about right now. There's a lot of good value on the flip side of some of those concerns too. But we want to address
I've
those.
heard some mixed reviews on how you've been getting your 60% of people, but that's your moral compass, not mine. But
Well,
I'm
I'd
just-
like to address that, Kathy.
We'd like to hear what are
Yeah,
the
because,
reviews?
well, I mean, we have a lot of people in this room that are involved in that process, and we'd
Well,
love
I
to
mean, I'm
hear
glad
it.
to hear that. I just
Yeah.
know some people who have been contacting me have felt very pressured into feeling stronger. And that, I don't feel good about hearing that at all.
And did they sign?
I didn't ask them if they signed their texts and emails and, you
Okay,
know,
well-
we've had so many people respond to this. It's
Well, I'd love to
crazy.
know the numbers, right? Of
Would-
how
would you
many
say
people
that
that
it's-
feel
Yeah,
that way.
has it been overwhelmingly negative, the response you're getting, or has,
Well-
what's the balance been? Because this is stuff that we want to learn about, right?
I would say the overall response that I've received has been, they're not in support of the lid. So I've tried to take I've gone through your website, I've taken all the research and really tried to understand both sides.
Sure.
Because obviously we're trying to do, it's the road of good intentions. I know you want a clean lake, we all want a clean lake. But it's, again, for me, it's, do I want the city of Mound to be
Yeah. Well, but you threw out a whole different thing, like
Well,
a way
I'm
of
throwing-
getting petitions, and that's
Well-
kind of at the heart of, I think, people in this room that have been
Sure.
involved in that process.
And again, I'm not on Harrison's Bay, so I have I have nothing to say about that except for what people have been concerned
Well,
about.
I would love for any of those people that you hear those concerns with, if they sign the petition, then they should be pulling their name back, right?
Yes.
And I have never had someone come to me and say, I signed under duress, I don't want to.
Well, I don't expect you would get that kind of
Well, then I
feedback.
I want to pull them out of the petition.
And again,
right?
I know you're morally a great human being, so I didn't say you are or aren't doing it, I'm just saying,
Like,
we
that
get all
was-
kinds of people.
That was a little, that
I'm
was.
sure that did hurt,
The
but
other-
we do get a lot of
But you
calls
hear
and,
the negative at this point, because our positives, we haven't asked them to reach out to you. You know, all the 140 people that signed the petition, they're not contacting you because they got no problem with it, right?
we have
So-
had, at least, I have had a couple of letters saying we're completely in agreement with it. So, no, not every single
Yeah.
All right,
comment is
all right.
negative.
Well, I just want to clear the record there, right? And say, if there's anyone that comes to the city and says that, it needs to go on the record and it needs to be pulled from the petitions.
One other bit
Yeah.
of peel the onion back that I would recommend too, and maybe this is something you're already doing. When you get feedback that's negative or derogatory in that way, look at where that individual is. Are they part of that lid boundary? Are they part of Harrison's Bay? Are they part of Mound? Because the other thing that we have seen over the last 60 to 90 days is people that don't even live here creating very, very verbal feedback that gets raised up in the social media atmosphere. It gets distributed very quickly.
Yeah.
But you have to look back, peel the onion back on the motive, where they're coming from. Are they part of the impacted properties that are here? And what's the background of
And,
that
and to
feedback?
tell
So
you
I
the
just
truth,
say,
I know
peel that onion
Mr.
back.
Rockwell is in the audience. He started a petition and a website. We didn't know who was running it, the anti-lid website. And we actually reached out to him via email. We didn't know who we were reaching out to, but said, hey, let's have a conversation about this. With all the residents, we have wanted to have a conversation. What is this about, right? Instead of going to social media or to going to these other ways of doing this, let's work together as a community to figure out what the solution is and not take it to other social media or anonymous posters or whatever you do, right? Say who you are, say what your morals are, and put them out there for people to actually address and have a conversation about. So we just want that, right, in our community. We have been wholly focused on community within HBA. How do we pull these people together and make a true community of people that are all working together to improve the Bay? That's what our vision is with this, and not, to cause division. We do not want to cause division, so.
But I appreciate the challenge. That's,
I mean,
like I said,
yeah,
iron sharpens iron, right? We want to know what the concerns are.
And we
we've
want
got
to
some
take
time.
those concerns to the experts too. If you feel uncomfortable with something, then don't take it from us. Take it to trusted experts, right? Ask the Department of Agriculture why they're researching Prosillicor and the chemical in Prosillicor, because it was something that was initiated by a senator, right, that said this chemical is wrong. And there are a whole slab of chemicals that fit into that, and Prosillicor is one. We've used Prosillicor once to treat milfoil. It is not something we use on an annual basis. And we can change that, right? I didn't know this before, that this was a possible issue chemical. And those are the types of conversations we need to have with our applicator. There are other alternatives. So I'm just asking for a conversation and a work session, and really to be able to dive into what concerns you have as part of the city. So,
Thank you. Again, great presentation.
any other questions?
cross your
Kevin,
Ts
do
and
you have
dot
any
your Is.
questions?
Yeah, I have some that kind of slowly getting answered as you guys go back and forth.
As we're wandering through the
I mean,
conversation.
we know you have a vested interest in Harrison's.
I don't want to jump in front of anybody else, so do you guys
Well,
have questions you want to ask first?
I had questions because emails and calls that I got, concerns of the governance structure, and what are the implications? We're only Mound, but there are other cities on Harrison Bay. So does each lid operate independently? Do you collaboratively work? How does that governance structure?
Well, you would be
Happen.
Harrison's Bay, just Mound.
Right.
Yeah,
But
Right
there's-
now, the
boundaries.
boundaries that you saw on the screen were purely inside the boundaries of the city of Mound. So they did not breach any additional city boundaries. So this lid would be contained for the city of Mound. There are other lids on Lake Minnetonka. One of the visions is coordination across those lids to say what's working, what's not working, what are you seeing in your bay. We believe that there could be an association of lids that share best practices, talk about harvesting, talk about pulling, talk about
about
soil
carp.
changes, talk about carp.
How
You
do
know,
we manage carp?
This is
Yeah.
not a lake that has gates at every bay, right?
Right.
It's a body of water that has 37 different unique bays and a lot of little offshoots and channels, right? So it's our best interest across 14 communities that surround the lake to try to find a way to work together and solve problems that are common.
I
And we
guess
think
that
this is a
was
structure that
my other
that allows.
concern, that there are no walls. There are no walls to stop this, so once a treatment is applied, even though I know it becomes diluted, it still can travel to other areas. And so, you know, what's the impact on that? The other thing I got in letters was individuals concerned about the cost and controlling the cost, and not happy about that. So it was governance, it was cost, and it was, I think you covered it in Kathy's comments.
So the cost part of it, we heard that, you know, what's to stop it from being $500 a year? What's to stop it from being $1,000 a year, whatever? And that is why we capped it. And we said, based on our proposal here, you are capped at whatever the double is of what you're paying initially. So over the life, if this lasts for 20 years from now, the most they can charge is $300 a year
For Lakeshore, yeah.
for the Lakeshore person, less for the others. But what that says then is if, say, costs go up and there are bigger needs, then the lid board would have to basically do what we did, which is get more than 50% of all the residents to approve raising that cap. So that was
And not
some-
50% of folks in attendance at an
Yeah.
annual meeting, 50% of everyone in that lid boundary.
Yeah.
So it's a high bar to try to raise that, and we wanted to be very intentional about that. You know, we know costs might increase, but hey, we're setting this thing with an absolute ceiling on it. It's not going any higher than that unless the community says, hey, we want it to go higher because we've got problems.
Yeah.
Well, in response to Sherry's comment, I think that's what I've heard a lot of too, because I think all of us realize things never go down. They only go up. So if treatments aren't working for you and you're getting no funding because the DNR isn't getting funding or whatever, in order to be effective, you'll have to raise it in
Well,
order
I
to get.
showed you the picture
Yeah, you
of
did.
St. Albans,
Yep.
right? Where
Yep.
they went from 92 acres to 10 acres or whatever of treating. That's the ultimate goal is the management of it is going to help us keep it at bay.
But what if the cost of continually doing that exceeds?
Then we're shooting
That-
ourselves in the foot.
That's what people are
Right?
concerned about.
We're concerned more about the community and
Yeah.
their expense burden than the risk of input costs going high, right? So we're saying regardless, if the chemicals go through the roof, 1,000% more, guess what? You're not going to get charged anymore because we got to find another way to do it. Because the biggest thing is no burden on the community, because otherwise people won't engage.
we
I don't
heard
want to
that.
engage. If there's a never-ending increase ability for this lid,
Yeah.
I don't want any part of it. I don't want to be
Yeah.
in it. Because this is a legacy home for my wife and I and our kids, and they're going to live here, and their kids are going to live here, and we're going to continue this down the road.
Yeah.
I don't want them to have a 600% increase, or, 50
And
years from
maybe-
now,
and
it's
maybe
off the
we're
charts.
shooting
But
ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
I mean, we had lots of conversations about this, right? Are we shooting ourselves in the foot and that we won't be able to do as much as we would want to do? And I guess that what that emphasizes is this need for partnerships, right? Is where we're out there hitting the pavement and working towards getting support from other agencies to do what we want to do. And this is what the lid is an advocate for Harrison's, right? They're out there advocating. I'm hoping to not be on the board of the lid in the near future, right? I want to get that off onto another set of people to be working with.
other questions, concerns? Thank you, Sherry, those are good ones.
What I will say is I do own Shoreline on Lake Langdon. I do not own it on Lake Minnetonka. What I struggle with is the fact that I've looked into trying to get assistance for Lake Langdon, so I feel your pain. I think what's difficult for the public, for us as a council, is, if we're on the shoreline, you are taxed at a higher rate. Where does that money go? Why is, it feels like LMCD, the DNR, everybody is passing the buck here and saying, hey, go create a lid and take care of this problem. When they should be responsible for taking care of it. the city of Mound, as far as I know, has no control over that lake whatsoever, correct? I mean, we don't own the lake.
Correct.
We own some of the shoreline in our commons program, but yet we have to be responsible for collecting your money, which I know that's the way it's been designated by the legislature or whoever came up with the lead program. And that's where I think I struggle, and I know that's where a lot of people, as they find out about this, are gonna have a difficulty understanding, especially those in other bays, or like myself on Lake Langdon or on Dutch Lake. Not that I feel like we're left out in the cold. I bought what I bought, and I know what's in that lake. It's nasty. But at the end of the day, it's very frustrating as a taxpayer, taxed at a higher rate, that these other governmental bodies are not taking care of what they are being, I would assume they're getting some sort of support from those taxes. Or where is that going, and how do we get that money clawed back?
Yeah.
It's
So it
not a-
goes to take care of the lake.
And honestly, I totally agree. In fact, you know what? We've got a lot of people that are coming in and using the lake and then leaving, right?
That was another complaint that we got.
And in some cases, polluting and doing other things to the lake. I would love to see the DNR charge some kind of parking permit, right? That can go back into Lake Minnetonka, right? Specific money that can go back into the lake, but we're not seeing that, right?
Right.
We don't see that, and the traffic since COVID on the lake has just ballooned, right? As far as the number of boats coming into the lake. So do I wish that there was another option? Absolutely. But does a lid give us an opportunity to potentially advocate more for that? And if we combined efforts with the other lids to really be able to advocate?
And honestly, Michelle, if I personally say, let's wait for the state to figure out how to fund Harrison's Bay and the invasive species that we need to challenge in this bay and try to improve the quality. I'm gonna be waiting until my kids' before anything makes it there. And I'm not
No, I know.
I'm not
I agree with what
disparaging
you're
the
saying.
state, I'm just saying, there are a lot of competing priorities. There's a lot of things out there. We just really believe that a locally controlled, managed, directed, concepted group of folks that all care about what happens in front of their 233 properties and on that lake is the best way to get resources to things that are important to those folks in that bay. And guess what? There's a lot of other people that benefit from that. Everybody that comes in for the day, every ice fisherman that parks on Centerview. We got, Harrison's has 60 to 65 ice homes that are out there for 2.5 months every winter. And I guarantee maybe 5% of those are folks that live on Harrison's Bay. They all benefit from higher water quality, no invasives, great fishing. And you know, there's a lot of folks that would benefit from this, but why not have the folks who are directly connected to it decide what needs to happen? And if that's treatments with chemicals, let's follow DNR guidance. If it's not, let's go out and pull weeds together. Let's figure out a way to do it. So,
Will you come pull my weeds?
I mean, it's like, if not us, then who?
Yeah.
And right now, there's no who,
I get it.
right? There's no one.
It's unfortunate, but I get it.
Start our own weed pulling business. I just have a few questions on stuff that I've kind of absorbed over the last couple of weeks, I guess, and they're not some my personal questions and some just based on a lot of the people that we've heard on both sides of the issue and been contacted. So the original proposal, is that what it's called? Like the original formation of the lid, kind of establishes like the cost. And like you said, it can't go up more than 100%, but that could be amended or voted to pass later. Can the original proposal be modified or?
It's the same process. The DNR has a process for ending the lid and also changing the scope of the lid. And again, it's the 50+ mark.
Okay, so I guess what I was kind of trying to say is, like you had put up before, like the agencies that control the regulations, you have to follow as a lid and the
Yeah.
project scope that a lid could perform. That wouldn't change, or could the board vote to
We can't
Start.
change, yeah,
We can't?
what the agencies set as the guidelines and the guardrails, we can't change those.
Yeah.
We can't influence statewide guardrails. All we can influence is what we would partner with those state entities on to execute for projects.
Okay. I
So
just heard a
maybe-
lot of,
So in the proposal on the third page, the objectives that we listed here, that's our scope.
What page?
It's page 3 of our proposal.
so could the scope change if the board wants to add something to their scope?
To
We-
the objectives,
Only-
not without a
Yeah,
50
without a
plus.
50+%.
Okay.
So what you see.
So it could, but not
could.
without 50
But it needs support from the community, from the.
of
local
the
impacted
properties.
folks.
The residents would have to decide where that makes sense.
What
Okay.
you see, and what we've seen in feedback on some of the lids, is that they will create a very narrow scope and say, we want to treat for invasive weeds, and that's it. And the DNR is not hugely in favor of that, right? Because it is not a holistic view of the health of the bay. You're not thinking about runoff and shoreline management and rain garden, all the things that kind of encompass the health of the bay. You're thinking very myopically about one topic. So they actually discourage very narrowly focused. But on the flip side, they also say you can't try to boil the ocean, so to speak, or boil the bay, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Let's not make it so crazy broad that anything can happen in there. So that's where we're gonna get a lot of good counseling also from Cassie and the DNR around, how does your scope look?
Yeah.
Is this the right kind of funnel for projects that might be
That's
out
what
there?
you'll hear from
Yeah.
the DNR, the comments you'll get from them will be around this particular proposal, our scope, our boundaries, all of that, whether that's, and we've done some pre-review, at least with Kathleen Metzger. However, she has to take it to a whole board for review.
And as Kevin kind of was touching on, I think that's part of why people are scratching their heads, because not everybody is in agreement with the direction the DNR is going. So if you're taking all direction from the DNR and not trying things from any other trusted sources,
Well, that's not our only source of information. I mean, I told you I'm on the Minnehaha
Yes.
Watershed Citizen Advisory Council. James Whisker and what they're doing on water quality has been really present. They're gonna work with us on water testing. How do we get good water testing so we can look at runoff and testing the composition of runoff that's coming in?
You work with the MPCA on setting a budget for phosphorus in the bay. Many of the bays have done that as well to say, hey, this is the phosphorus load that bay can control and manage effectively. You get above that, we've got serious issues. So it's not singular, it's not just the
The
DNR.
DNR is just the governing, like, they're the ones this program goes through.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the state decided that, right? The state decided through statute or whatever that they administer at least the proposal and give guidance behind the proposal. But ultimately, you know, they're just advising on the proposal.
Can a city vote or have an election to like dissolve a lid once it's formed? Like if it's not going well, or,
The city,
like, so Stubbs Bay passed last night.
Yeah.
You know, if it's going great, it's going great. In a couple of years, if it's
They
just
wanna dissolve
residents
it.
aren't happy, is
Right.
it just a self-contained,
I
the
think-
residents need to dissolve it, or can the city? Say we're not
I
doing
don't
that.
know the answer to
Yeah,
that
I don't-
question. I heard that it was 50 plus, you know.
For the residents.
Residents could say, hey, there's no need for it anymore, we want to get rid of it.
but I think it follows a similar process, Kevin. So those residents then would have they'd reach the hurdle 50% plus to come back, bring it to the city and say, our proposal is to disintegrate this lid, dissolve this lid. It no longer
But I
serves the
don't-
purposes. And
you'd
then
have
you
to
have,
consult.
I think
So
that's how
what
it
if,
works.
let's say, I'm just gonna use Stubbs Bay as an example, like if they're all gung ho and they love their lid, but the city does not.
Oh, I don't think the city
I
can
don't
It's a question for
independently,
someone else.
I don't think, yeah,
I
I
don't
think
think the
you have
city
to
can
ask that
independently
It's the residents.
dissolve it. It's the residents.
It's the residents in the lid.
They would bring it to
Okay.
you and then you would
I
vote
think
on it.
so.
Okay.
so the city
But I
couldn't
don't
just
know.
say, we're done, because if the city's done, you have no lid, because you have no clearinghouse for your money.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to
We'll-
that.
we'll clarify
would
that.
have to
Yeah, that would be
We'll clarify
great,
that
that's a
process.
great question,
other
Kevin.
experts involved in that.
Okay.
We'll confirm that. in
Yeah.
Who
public
holds,
guidance.
who would hold the election for the like every 2 years, you know, kind of like the city does every
Right.
2 years, you have 2 new
So
directors?
the current board is responsible for arranging the annual meeting, and by statute, I think it has to be scheduled in like August, July or August every year. So it's actually defined in the statute when the annual meeting is.
Okay,
And rules around notifying people, people have to get so much in advance. In our proposal, we talk about absentee voting for a household, so if you can't make the annual meeting, the budget is part of the packet that goes out. Here are the projects we're looking at doing, here's the budget, and any project over $5,000 has to be specifically approved by the annual meeting. So that is arranged by the current board, and then nominees come in up to a certain point for the board positions from residents. And then at the annual meeting or via absentee, those votes come in as to who they want on the board. And I suppose it probably makes sense to do like a, hey, the top 3 vote getters are on the board kind of thing, you know? So that's what I understand about it, but obviously as we get into this, there'll have to be some guidance, right, from the DNR that's managing the statute or whatever, because it is in the statute, like what the rules are around the annual meeting.
okay. And then, some of this isn't really all a question, it's a lot of feedback, I guess, for you guys at the same time too, but over the last couple of weeks, it's like a clean/healthy lake means different things to different people. You know, like some people want it to get cleaned by chemicals, some do not, and, or like manual, you know, weed pulling and all that stuff, or just let it be. Some people don't care about the chemical part at all, they care about the tax or the, I mean,
Yep.
tax isn't the right word, but the annual dues part of it.
Yep, yep.
And how that could change.
Yep.
And then I think, I mean, what I've heard most is people care about how the scope or from the original proposal could change over
Right,
time.
right.
You know, that was the main
And
thing that
that's
I
a
had
great
heard.
question for people that are smarter than I am.
Yeah, I mean, I'm close proximity to it, I'm not one of the affected or impacted properties.
Yeah.
But, you know, whether you're for the lid or not, that was one concern was, you know, how, you know, if, when can it
Yeah.
change? And
Well,
Those
and
are
that
good.
was one thing that Kathleen told us very specifically, was that what you list here is what you can do, right? So if you start thinking that you're gonna do, I can't even think what it would be.
Retaining walls or something.
Retain,
Who knows?
pay for a new seawall, or
Yeah.
pay for dredging, right, of a lagoon or whatever. That's not in our scope, and that's not something that can be changed at this point.
Oh, good points that we'll have addressed in the FAQ, so folks have got good information.
Well, and that's where, you know, having, and Kathleen seems to be pretty good with the statute, but even Scott, you, from that standpoint, any advice, you know, that you have after looking over what the statute said? But there is a lot of information there and governance around this within the statute.
Okay, and then, I mean, I think you guys kind of answered this before, but just because I've been asked about it multiple times. So like lids are or aren't affiliated with LMA?
No.
They're
Or
not.
They can be, but they don't need to be, or how does that?
A lid could pursue a membership with the LMA.
No,
I don't know if they,
So
how that
if
would
they're-
work, I'm not sure.
LMA is a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
So it might be a conflict of interest at that point, you know, I don't know exactly, but they oftentimes start out as part of their Bay treatment plan. And the reason why we weren't in the Bay treatment plan is because they wouldn't entertain talking about water quality, stormwater runoff, and carp. So they wouldn't let us even speak to it in our newsletter. And that was really our objective, was a holistic look. Hey, we know we have a carp problem. We know we have poor water quality. It's not just the invasives that are an issue in our bay. And so we wanted that holistic approach, and that's why we went off, Jane and I went off and created a nonprofit ourselves so that we could elect a board and people.
I think the utility of a lid would be partnering with LMA for information sharing, best practices, what's working, what's not working. Because they've got 10 years plus of working with 14 affected bays and all the communities that surround those bays around how to address these problems. So we'd never want to hold back that information source. We want to find best practices, and we're going to tap into anyone who's been able to build those, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And I think I'm echoing what Councilmember McEnany said earlier about, like, we need to feel 100% confident that it's not going to cost, it's not going to add expenses to the city of Mound too, or, you know, anything like that, because we have this long list of council priorities, and, you know, a lid is not on it.
Sure, yeah, understand.
But is
We have a
water
priorities
quality-
list every year.
I mean, is water quality on it, is stormwater runoff as part of your stormwater management plan, right? I know you've used some of the things that we've done as part of that plan.
Water quality is definitely on it.
This would
Different water
be-
quality.
But, oh, gotcha. We all know about that. But those are things that our activities would then kind of feed into stuff you need for your
Yeah.
permit.
So what does it look like when there is a lid and you guys have a project or a treatment that, you know, you have to follow the DNR, MCWD, and LMCD regulations? Is it something that can just happen and be facilitated through the lid, or does it need to come to like a city council meeting for
Oh,
approval?
no.
It does not need to come through city
100%
council.
done through the board.
Which that bothers me.
Me too,
Again,
but it's like
implying.
self-contained, kind of like you guys can,
I mean, that's what I understand.
I understand it's, you're using approved chemicals, I don't mean it like that, like,
Yeah.
we can
But
just do
like,
whatever,
we're
just,
gonna do this project you guys approve, kind of thing. And my understanding is we need the approval from the residents. And not, but Jesse, maybe you can find out more, or maybe you know more. I know you've been talking to some other people about it.
I'm just curious, like the ongoing process for that, you know? If it's something that,
It's not that I understand, but I know that, I think it's St. Albans Bay, I think Greenwood actually puts a at-large, like, member on that, and maybe they're responsible for periodic updates. I'm sure as an LGU, you guys can set your own, what you want from the lid.
That's the flexibility too, as we design this together. You know, within that proposal, as we get closer to that, to finalizing that, if there's something that you want to see, report outs at every other council meeting. I mean, I hate to do that, but if you're concerned about, I want to know about those projects, and if they're happening, and I want some oversight to say no, or I want to at least understand what the impacts are and what you did to get to that decision, that's legitimate. I understand that. You're representing the city of Mound and all the residents in it. So if that's part of the structure and that communication and report back needs to be in this to be supported, we want to talk about that.
And there is an annual report that goes to the LGU.
Okay.
And as well as the DNR and that kind of thing.
the only other feedback I got was really like wanting clarification on, which I don't know, I'm not necessarily asking for an answer now, but saying who's responsible and who's liable when there is a chemical treatment in the bay, you know, if something happens or, you know, whatever.
Sure.
That
So in
the
the-
city's not responsible for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that Scott can maybe advise about, or your insurance agent, or whatever, but liability insurance would be something for sure.
For a lid.
For the lid would maintain liability, but also every contractor used by the lid must be insured.
I just have a couple more. The impaired bay list, what is needed to get, I mean, other bays too, but Harrison Bay in particular off of it? Is it more of like a weed or a carp thing?
It's a multifaceted
Both.
water quality measurement, right? So, and every, like I said, every bay is a little bit different. You know, if you go over to Wayzata Bay, you might not have the turbulent water that we get from carp on this side, and the shallow and the muddy bottoms. So every bay is a little bit different on that, so the strategies, but the measurements that say this is an A quality bay versus a D quality bay, or a poor versus an exceptional, those are managed by the MCWD and the MPCA. So they kind of set the metrics, those don't change, we don't influence those. So what we'd be trying to do is move those metrics, quality on water, parts per million, phosphorus load, there's a
But
variety of
we're
things. we do.
limited in what we can do, right? We can, if you talk to the watershed, the load into Harrison's is really small based on the number of people around the bay.
But the problem is more
It's
weeds
Painter's
or
Creek.
more,
Painter's
It's-
Creek
it's-
brings in a
well,
lot,
It's a combo,
Yeah.
right? So the carp are turning up the internal phosphorus, right? But right now, we have a lot of external phosphorus that's coming into the bay through Painter's Creek. And there is a visual, it's actually the very last page that the watershed did for us, which kind of talks about the balance between what's coming in and what's already in the bay. We have to reduce Painter's Creek, and that is a partnership thing with the watershed, is to get priority on the Painter's Creek projects. The other thing that can be done is alum treatments in the bottom of the bay to bind the phosphorus so that the carp
That's what they do in
can't
Langdon.
release that.
They did that to Langdon, I don't know, it was probably 30 years
Yeah.
ago. I will say it hasn't done anything at
But
this
if
point.
you're not reducing what's coming in.
The load coming in.
Then the alum
Yeah, inflow,
treatments
outflow.
really don't have an impact. And so it's really goes back to those partnerships, right? We can help residents to do clean water practices, right? And keep their water on their land. Moving the needle is a joint effort with the watershed.
I don't know, I don't think I have any other questions.
Can you give us an example, though, I guess, I'll speak up, sorry. Let's say you go from 150, and I'll just grab that one number, and it's gonna raise up to 200. Do you know how that flows through? Does the city have to notify the residents, or how does that actually get
Well,
increased on their taxes?
Oh, so what we would do every year is we would give you a list. So the list I gave Jesse, I have a whole list of all the properties and their PIDs.
Okay.
And we would actually put that together, right, by property,
Okay,
what the assessment is. So basically, it's the PID and the amount of assessment. I saw the St. Albans Bay one, it's just pretty simple, 2 columns. PID, assessment.
right.
And we
Okay.
provide that to the city.
And again, any increase has to be approved by the lid community.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was just curious on how it actually flowed through the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
they sent
taxing
me
authority
theirs,
gets it.
and
Yep.
it was 2 columns.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty.
All right, pretty simple then. Okay, that's all I have.
I'm grateful for all the work you guys have done on the projects on the bay. It's just, I'm regurgitating a lot of questions and
Oh.
Sure.
could have
totally,
10 more
totally.
questions next week and 10 more after that.
Well, and honestly.
That's what we want.
I mean, we want to help in any way with those questions, right? And however we need to connect up with experts, I have some questions, right? And we've tried to really talk to people about this, and I don't know, I mean, it's something, like, when I'm not doing this anymore, it's kind of a legacy thing, right? Who's gonna do it?
I think the other thing, our hope is that that public hearing, you're gonna hear a lot of the positive support as well, because as Sherry said, people generally don't send those support emails unless they've got an issue or they got something they want to solve. So, you may see different perspective between here and the public hearing, and then certainly on that day. And again, we welcome
I mean,
all
we wanna-
perspectives.
And like I said, Kathy, if anyone wants to pull their signature, I hope that they're being vocal about that.
Mhm.
I have no problem directing them back to you.
Sure.
And I have.
That's where it should go.
Again, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I have no idea what you guys do. I don't live on Harrison Bay. I'm just sharing
No, I
some of
get
the
it.
feedback I've gotten, whether it's false or real. It's
No.
none of my concern.
Well,
But to
no,
pass it
and
along
we've
to
heard
you.
a lot of it. We've heard.
Valuable
Yeah,
feedback.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
have.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've heard a lot of it, and we want to address it, right? We want to have a conversation about it. So what's our alternative if we don't do this? I guess that's the big question, right?
Thank you. We
Yeah.
took a lot of time.
For
Yeah,
your time.
thank you, guys.
You guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you take the invitation to reach out to any of us between now and public hearing.
Oh,
to
do we
address
have a
anything
date
you
for
got,
a
so.
public hearing, or is that something you will let us know? Because I think the statute says 30 days, right?
We have to notice for 21, right?
Right, so we need to give 21 days notice to the residents and the various organizations.
Yep.
So we'll be waiting for the report from the DNR, the verification. As Mr. Landsman said, more than likely the first meeting in August.
Oh, I thought you had you thrown out a different date? to
Initially,
me?
I thought, because
Oh.
looking at the
Okay.
statute for a normal public hearing, we only need 10 days, but I think.
Oh, the
between a little
notice
bit of
is
work
longer?
That needs to be done and the rules from the DNR, that would make more sense.
And the DNR, she had no problem getting you comments by July 8th, because I threw that out like it's just too quick. I wanted to
No,
ask her,
And
but,
that's gonna be really helpful just to have this all organized ahead of time.
Yeah.
We wanna make sure that when we schedule the public hearing, that we're not waiting for anything.
so when do you think we'll hear about that? Like that
Hopefully
date?
the next couple weeks. But we'll need to get everything directly to the residents too, so.
Just the date. We just need the date.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the second Tuesday in August would be the,
Our target date.
yeah, that'd be
Okay.
the first meeting, so.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everybody. I think we'll move on to our next agenda item, number 9. Approve resolution for awarding bid for sewer televising project. Thanks for your patience.
What's that?
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, acting mayor, members of the council, Matt Feldman, city engineer. So, on June 3rd, we requested quotes from several contractors to televise a portion of the city's sewer system. So, on an annual basis, the city does about a fifth of the city, so that just kind of, I think it's Met Council statute is that they're supposed to maintain everything at least once within every 5 years. So that's kind of our target here. We received 3 quotes back, and pipe services out of Shakopee was the low quote at $42,023.49.
Take that personally,
And they've done
yeah.
work in the city for several times before, so we would recommend awarding the contract to them. So on the next page, you have a resolution to award the quote to pipe services. Let me know if you have any other questions.
Catch up here. Thanks for closing the door. Any discussion on this?
It is on page 1561.
I don't have anything personally. Okay. All right, look for a motion to make a resolution on 1561.
Actually, have it be a motion to, a motion to pass resolution number 25-58.
A motion to pass the resolution 25-58.
So I make a motion to
Pass the resolution.
award the resolution contract for 2025 sewer televising project PW 2504,
And which is resolution number 2520.
which is
2550.
resolution number 25-58.
Correct, that's good.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Well, you made the motion.
Second.
I'll second it for you.
Okay, all right. We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting through all that.
So if you ever want to clear a room, bring Matt up.
I was gonna say, did you take that personally?
We should have him start first.
Hang on, listen.
Yeah.
I had thought about, just saying we should reverse these items, and I'm like, well, someone's gonna ask something, and we're gonna need,
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
some point,
Matt.
it's gonna come up, and I'm gonna need,
Yeah.
I need to be involved.
yeah, well, thank you. All right. Quickest agenda item of the night. Number 10, updates from council members. Just go down the list in order on the agenda here. Councilmember Pugh?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Councilmember McEnany?
Well, I just have a request. I can't take driving by our 3 flags down at Veterans Park and seeing the pole that the Mound flag is on is not plumb. It's so crooked. No, it drives me insane. Because it's like our, you know, all the flag poles are straight, and then there's the one that the Mound flag's on, and it's like somebody hit it or something.
So this is Veterans Park,
Correct.
across from Surfside, or Veterans Park by the
No,
parking ramp?
at the main,
Okay, 'cause I'm
at
thinking
the
the same
parking ramp.
name. I think they're both called Veterans Park.
One's, yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
they
this
are
is
both
Veterans
called.
Plaza.
Yeah.
Okay,
Pardon me, the
Got it.
flagpole in Veterans Plaza. Can somebody please get that flagpole straight? It looks just really tacky. And then to throw salt into the wounds, it has the Mound flag on it. You know, typical. So typical. That's all I have.
all right. Councilmember Herrick.
Okay, to shed a little light on your request, and Jesse, you're aware that I met with Ryan this morning, and I guess Dustin was out ill. And that was part of the discussion that we had, was that particular park, because it is in dire need of some love. So I have reached
The
out.
plaza?
Yes. It's a lot for our staff to take care of it. And there's other parks obviously in need, and I know Maggie's reached out and they're trying to track down volunteers to work on that. I did reach out to Cindy Palm, and I'm hoping we can get the auxiliary to actually come and spend a day to get that thing into shape. Now, they wouldn't have anything to do with those flags, but there are
No, the
additional.
pole.
Yes, the poles. But there are also, we have other flags, which I did address with Ryan this morning. He's gonna get a bid or a cost on it. We evidently go through quite a few flags because of the weather, you know, they get torn up. I was requesting, I would like to see more of them going down towards Surfside. We're getting ready for Spirit of the Lakes Parade, 4th of July, so on and so forth. We do have some mechanisms to actually put those on the poles, the light poles. There are also some other poles in there, which he's gonna get us a bid on what it would cost to put flags on those, rather than adding the flag poles. But for consistency, I think he suggested possibly using just the little, I don't know what it is, the bracket that you
Oh,
put
yeah,
the.
like the tent, oh.
Right, and then get those restored this way as well. So that was something we were talking about. He was gonna get us some, you know, a cost.
Love that.
Obviously, I can't approve it, but if, you know, we could get that information and put it in front of the council, it will be an expenditure, which we probably haven't budgeted for, I don't know. I'm hoping that we can get that added to the budget in the future to make sure, and to address your Veterans Park issue. That is something that is very vivid when you come into town. That is something
The
that.
first thing
that-
you see.
The first thing you see,
It's the
right.
crooked flagpole.
Well,
Maybe it's the same people
First thing I
snapping
see.
off the posts at Belmont
Right.
Park.
Yeah, yeah.
and,
right.
and they are
Metal
work,
poles.
yeah. I mean, and our, you know, Public Works Department does a tremendous job. They are tasked with taking care of a lot of parks and a lot of public spaces. They did just, I think he told me they just got the kids on board. Jesse helped me out here. I think they got them on board last week and they're still coming on board.
The seasonal?
Yeah,
Seasonal help.
Seasonal, there we go, sorry, I shouldn't call them kids. And so that'll help, but they're trying to get up to speed, and he's also gonna get me a timeline of when the whole area as we come into town will be completed. Because there's a
great.
lot of dead trees, weeds, so on and so forth.
That'd be beautiful. The flags look so great, you know,
Yeah.
as you're looking downtown in
Right.
all directions. It'd be beautiful to have them
Right,
go down a little bit further.
and that is the center of town, you know, and we want Surfside to be our premier park, and that will help to make that whole area look nice.
Yeah.
That's really good. Oh, do we have a date yet for, we were talking about doing a public, a combined meeting between the Parks and Open Spaces and the council again? Do we have any idea when we're gonna do that? I know we talked about it, but I don't think we got confirmation.
Well, so we did that, when was that?
Last month, May.
Just last month?
So I think it was
So
about a month ago.
once a year, is that when we're doing
Well,
it?
no, we talked
Yeah.
about doing an additional, because we ran out of time.
But-
There's some
but-
additional topics.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that
Okay.
up. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I had emailed Jesse and asked
And I
Michelle.
didn't see it till after the
And
fact.
I included Jesse on that. I wanted to call a special meeting, a workshop together for us. I have a whole list of stuff. Well, I was out having to take photos of all the parks, you know, for the website and stuff. I have a whole list of things that I think would be relevant for all of us to talk about prior to our meeting with the parks, so we can actually give them some
Direction.
reasonable direction. I gave you guys so much credit after our joint meeting. I'm like, it'd be like having a whole bunch of employees, and they just keep trying to please you, but they've never been told, you know, what's asked of them. So I think it would be beneficial for us as a council to really examine some of these things so we can help the Parks Board out to
Wonder if we should try to
focus on really things that we all can get our arms wrapped around. And I think it would be beneficial for us to meet first.
Yeah, so that could be, I mean, I don't have a preference on if or when, like, you know, like meeting again.
Yeah, I wanted
I
it
would
we
say
haven't
today,
scheduled-
but found
sooner
out
than
Jesse.
We
was-
haven't
or
scheduled anything,
Jason
but do you
was,
think
yeah.
it should be after we have more workshops regarding the budget to be like, well, okay, so here's what we decided we want to allocate in addition before we like, say, here's some priorities for parks and open spaces, and then we're like, kind of having to backpedal if we don't do X, Y, and Z with that budget, or,
Well, I'd also like to talk about the amenities down at the new Lost Lake Commons.
on our
I think
our
we as a
budgeting and
council have never
expenditures.
had a discussion about it. It's just presented to us. Everything we've agreed upon so far, I think we've all been in agreement on. But a lot of it, like the hammocks and the art walk, I'd like to see the feedback the art walk got. I just think we as a council need, it's a $2.2 million park
I'm
that
hearing
we have had
feedback from the
zero
community.
conversation as a council about.
but for Councilmember Herrick's point, like, when to schedule that other meeting, like, just based on timing for everything, should it be, you know, a lot later in the year, or should it be soon? I mean,
Well,
I
I'd
don't-
would say
I wanted
sooner.
it tonight, until I found out Mayor Holt wasn't gonna be here. And nobody brought it up anyway, so it wasn't gonna happen.
Well-
But soon,
I think in line with your comment about, I mean, we've got a big park that we need some answers on and some direction to give the parks, you know, open spaces group. You know, we're talking about a lot of money, and I've heard a lot of feedback from a lot of residents saying, what?
yeah.
You know, they're shocked at the amount of money it's gonna cost to do that. So I think we have some accountability and responsibility to be able to document what these costs are, and did we ever get bids back on that
We're
park?
actually coming to the Parks Commission meeting on Thursday to kind of talk through
Okay.
that feedback, and
So-
then we're gonna get into finalizing bids, so I don't have the.
Bids
schedule
for what?
The
For
new
the-
park.
For phase 2 of the Lost Lake Commons.
And what does that bid include?
So that'll be, putting the concrete in where's the gravel now, and then doing the rest of the concrete around the performance area, the low area by the lake,
The,
where the pavers
Pergola?
and stuff are now.
Yeah.
where the bricks are.
Yeah,
Again,
with the
I
bricks
just
up.
feel like
Pavers,
we
yeah.
need to talk
Yep.
about some
I-
of
I
this
agree with-
before it just gets.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
mean, Is
know.
there a better place to have the performance area that makes, I just feel like we have had zero communication about this, other than we've been looking at the plans, but every time we've asked you, like, you know, the hammock hooks, well, how much are they? And you go, well, nothing's been decided. That leaves my brain thinking we all still have a lot to talk about.
So we've got it pretty close to be nailed down, and I'd say we can share that, and maybe I don't know if a workshop would be the best.
I would like to see a
Spot.
workshop.
I
To
really want to
finalize
see
that.
it too.
I would like more clarity around the cost for this initiative.
I kind of want to speak to a couple of those when I get to my update thing, but I
Okay.
can wait until, did you add more stuff?
No, I think I'm in agreement with Ms. McEnany. Yeah, I think we need to provide direction. The community's starting to clamor, you know, what's going on, when's it gonna be done, what's it gonna cost, you know, what's the holdup, you know, so on and so forth.
Well, there's always been a budget
Excuse
for
me.
it. It's just the
Well-
details on what we're buying with the budget.
Yeah, it's the details, that's the right
Yeah,
word.
but we've known generally.
Well-
So I guess what I wanted to, I don't really have much to add, but the one thing I did want to talk about was the budget a little bit, but this would be a big part of it. And then, so we have a finance committee workshop next Tuesday, right?
Well, that's a meeting of the finance committee
Yep.
with staff.
Yep,
We
and
have
then-
a planned workshop with the council before the meeting on the 24th.
Yes, okay, so then, like, at that point, I kind of want to do, I feel like this is, you know, it's never a one workshop thing with the budget, but like, that was at top of my mind as we go look through like different departments was, you know, to have a workshop right away after we meet to get everyone on the same page. And like you said, it's not like we talk about the budget like 2 months after
Well,
it's been
if
being
you're
worked
having
on
a-
or whatever.
Giving a budget workshop, one of the things that I keep thinking about is every year our liquor store is making more and more money. And so that money has been allocated towards special projects in the past. Do we need to maybe rethink how we allocate that resource? You know, could,
Yeah, I mean,
because,
this,
I mean, it amazes me. You know, it's kind of significant to me.
it is,
the
and I think
profits
it's,
we're making. Maybe we should be worried about the amount of alcohol being consumed in this town.
Tough times.
but, you know, part of that was to pick apart and assess like phase 2 and phase 3. And
Right.
just decide together if it's, like, is this part of phase 2 a priority for us? Can we do without it? Do we definitely want it? Do we want it to be different? And then lay that out, but that's just one like little part of the city budget, but
But that's a big
Well, that's a
deal.
big
But the
part- it's a
visual
big deal.
part
It's very
and-
visual.
Just the concept.
for me, it's like, the next thing people are gonna talk about is like the seating timeline, because those people have not, as Matt said at the last council meeting, they're not getting paid until it looks a certain way. But it'd be cool if it could get seated like,
I think
it
they
tomorrow,
reseeded
but-
it.
It has been done, so it's starting to come through.
okay, so that's like, you know, we have that
You don't
phase
allow
done
you
and then
to-
move on to 2 and 3, but I mean, this is pretty, it's only 2 weeks away, we can talk about everything that we just talked about, but that was important to me too, so I think we'll definitely spend a solid amount of time on that part of the,
So your initial meeting is on the
because
17th.
the park budget is, phase 2 and 3 are the budget, but it doesn't mean that it's exactly that. I mean,
Well, and as you said, it
we'll
doesn't mean we
decide.
have to spend it
Yeah.
either.
Right.
You
Yeah.
said that at our workshop with the parks.
Yeah, maybe we don't know what art we need yet, maybe we don't do that.
We have lots
phase
of
2 or
things
3
that
right now.
money
We
can go
wait,
to.
or,
So when's the workshop with the council?
so
Have
we have the
established that?
finance committee
Okay.
meeting
On the 17th?
to prepare for that workshop on the 17th, and that'll just be the finance committee meeting, but the following week, before the council meeting, we'll do the workshop at 5 here.
And
for the
that's
budget.
June 24th?
Yep.
That's what I was trying to,
Yep.
okay.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to get at, June 24th. All right.
But I think we can get, you know, some stuff done that day, but we have to just decide what's, you know, like the most important, and then, you know, whether it's water or Lost Lake Commons or there's other big stuff. The Lost Lake Commons is just part of it, but,
Right.
you know, we'll be talking about it pretty quick.
Well, maybe that does make sense to go through all the budgets and where we can
That's what I was
allocate funds.
saying.
And then following, I didn't realize you were having that meeting. Following that meeting on the 24th, maybe we can get together and
The
have
parks.
a group on parks. And then we can set a time aside to meet with
Then
parks
schedule a
again.
meeting, yeah.
So we can actually be clear on what can we accomplish and what can't.
What do we have in the budget?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Maybe we can get that worked out, because I know we have to do a special notice and all that fun stuff so many days ahead, so.
oh, yeah.
We want to try to get that all timed out.
Yep.
Maybe when you meet
So,
with
yeah,
Jason.
I
we
mean,
can-
I didn't have anything else, we just wanted to communicate that the, you know, we have the finance committee meeting and then budget workshop is just 2 weeks away, so,
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
What time would that be? Sorry.
5.
5, okay. So we'll have only an hour. Okay.
And then I'm really happy to hear it was seated. That was actually on my list, and I was like, I'm just gonna bug them again. But
No, it's looking good.
cool. Was there anything else done down there besides the seating, or was that kind of just all that needed to get done?
I think they raked up a little bit, but that was really it. There are some cracked panels that need to be replaced yet. We're not rushing that, but that'll need to be done here
Cool.
sooner than later.
Okay, awesome.
That promenade is the coolest part of that whole
Yeah.
area. I just love that.
That's what
It's so
we're hearing,
pretty
yep.
Yep.
and wide, and it
It's
really
awesome.
helps
Nice.
the trail, you know, Andrew's Trail. It's just really nice.
Agreed. All right, well, I don't have anything else. Anything else, item number 11? You guys.
Oh, is that me?
That's you. That's y'all.
I was just,
Last time you did.
I'm only just gonna add a little bit on the budget thing, so I think part of the reason why we're moving ahead with this particular workshop is sort of in response to some of these questions that have come up, because we have a pretty well worn path on how the budget comes to be every year, and I just had it in front of me, but Noah passed out his assignments to everybody last week about the dates for when all the department heads need to have their budgets pulled together. And so that's more of a July thing, and then, of course, we'll come back for a bigger presentation to the council ahead of our statutory requirements for the preliminary budget and levy in September. So I think we're just sort of getting a little bit ahead of it this year, because there's a lot of moving parts, but we're still, the goal will be to still stick with our long-term financial management plan, which did address the liquor store, and we did reassign the funds on that a little bit more towards water coming into 2025. But one of the things Ellers did sort of push was that this is not, it's not the steady pipeline of money like a levy is, where every year we can set it and we know that's what we're
That's
gonna get. You know, if people
People
suddenly
could stop
stop
drinking.
drinking alcohol, of course, well, then that would dry up, so to speak. So, but that's one of the things that'll be discussed too, is just what financial tools we have at our disposal
Sure.
to be able to.
How much is the Parks going to get off of the townhomes in, on Commerce, the new development?
That is a really good question.
Because
I
we
can-
get a percentage of that development.
I don't think it's a
cost.
percentage, but it's in the code that there's a certain amount of money
Yeah,
per acre.
it goes to
or
parks.
It's a green space type of thing, but I can get that for you.
So that's something that we never had in futuristic budgets, projections for that fee, for that development. And
And,
then there'd be one for Old Shoreline, if he comes back
right, any new development has to pay for
to the
park
parks.
dedication fees.
Right. So,
Good
see, there
call.
is money coming.
Otherwise, I don't think I have anything. The special session took place. There's no local projects in it. I'm gonna provide a little bit more of an update to you all directly and ahead of our July water meeting, because that's pretty pertinent to this, but it sounds like a couple different grant programs were funded a little bit more in the PFA, and we are fundable, so more to come is really just the answer on that, but otherwise, that's all I have.
Be able to get a lot more done on other stuff after our 24th workshop.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? All right. If there's no further discussion, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Adjourned.